I live in a brand new apartment complex on the nice side of town. My city itself is pretty safe. This is the first time that I've ever lived alone, so even though it's a safe area, I do take regular precautions, which included installing a Ring video doorbell. I've honestly never needed it in the 6 months that I've lived here, as no unexpected visitors have ever come by. That is, until last night. I was sitting at home alone with my dog, working on some homework. It was nearly 8 p.m. and beginning to get dark. At night, I have my Ring set up to alert me when any person is detected outside my door. I received a motion notification on my phone, but I didn't think much of it. After all, at 8 p.m., it's not that late, and people are still walking up and down the hall, down the stairs, etc. About 30 seconds later, I hear several loud knocks on my door, and my Ring is pushed 3 times in rapid succession. At this point, I'm a little jolted, and my dog is going absolutely nuts. I open up the app to see 2 men standing outside my door, 2 men that I had never seen before. I debated internally on if I should open it or not, but then decided since it wasn't quite dark yet, and my neighbors were home, that it would be safe to do so. I slowly opened the door, just enough to put my head out. The man nearest to me sat there with the summer decoration committee, and then went on to compliment the random summer wreath that I had on my doorway. I guess this was just used as a way to break the ice, because he then went on to say that he was with an internet company, and he and his partner were here to offer me a deal. Now, my apartment complex has a very strict no-tolerance policy for solicitation of any kind. We as tenants are told to immediately report that kind of activity, and there are signs posted all around stating that solicitation is prohibited by law here. I told the men that I'm happy with my current service and wasn't interested in switching. The man who spoke first continued to speak about the great deal they were offering. I continued to decline. He kept saying that he lived really close to here and he'd be happy to personally set up the service. He even offered to come inside and help me get started immediately. I declined the offer once more, and that's when he said that if I changed my mind, to give him a call, because he could, quote, be here in 5 minutes to help me out. He handed me a business card, and I tried to end the conversation again. He then tells me that he just can't walk away knowing I could get such a good deal, and I'm just saying no to it. At that point, my instincts were telling me that something was off. I decided to take a more aggressive approach, and I asked him if he was aware that my apartment has a strict no solicitation policy. He said that he was aware, but that he had cleared it with management. My apartment has a very small management team, and I know every single one of them. I asked who he cleared it with, and he said that he cleared it with the guys on the golf cart, Mike and Will, and that Mike was a great guy. Now, this all but confirmed that this was a lie. Our management team is solely women here. There's nobody by the name of Mike or Will. In fact, only one man works in the apartment, and his name is Joe. I say thanks, but I'm not interested, before quickly closing the door and locking it loudly. I took a closer look at the business card that he handed me once they left. It had a logo and the name that he gave me, but the email was not a company email. It was a Yahoo account, one with a rather unprofessional prefix. The phone number also didn't appear when I searched it up for the company. I decided to post about my encounter in the residents-only Facebook page. A few other women commented that they had had similar interactions tonight, but that they had been given different names. The strange thing was, none of the men residents or couples were approached. It was only women who these people spoke with. They talked to my upstairs neighbor and my neighbor across the hall, both women, and didn't speak to either of the men that live on the same floor as me. Everyone was given different names, and everyone was offered vastly different deals. The 2 other women that I connected with were told that these guys didn't have business cards to hand out. I thought it might be worth Googling the guy's name to see if anything popped up. Sure enough, the second result was a report on an offender registry. Turns out, the guy who spoke at my door has 5 felonies and has served several years in jail on various charges. charges that include trafficking a controlled substance, theft by deception, possession of stolen property, and even an aggravated assault. I knew that it was him because there was a photo attached to the report. I also learned that he's currently still on parole until November. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking the situation because this is my first time experiencing something like this, but I know that it didn't feel right. Maybe I am just being dramatic or paranoid, but the entire thing feels more than just a little bit off. I'm not sure if they were just scammers or if they were staking out places to rob, or worse. I reported it to my property manager who's investigating it today, but I'm still a bit uneasy about the whole thing. If they return, I'll be calling the police for sure. As of the time of writing this, nothing else suspicious has happened. I'm safe at the moment. I'll continue to stay vigilant, and I encourage everyone out there to do the same. My wife and I travel often, city to city, and state to state even. At one point, we settled down in Vegas for a few months. There was one night we were arguing after work, headed towards Henderson, which, for those that don't know, it's a city outside of Vegas. Lots of isolated streets out that way. I was sitting reclined back in the passenger seat when we ran over something in the road, and our tire definitely popped. My wife got out to check and confirmed it. Within seconds of stopping though, a woman in a very nice car pulls up behind us. I saw that it was a woman in the mirror, and I continued to lay back in my seat, still mad about whatever we were fighting about, still stubborn, and figuring this woman was just checking on my wife, assuming that she was all alone. The woman said she had a brother-in-law with a tow truck, and that he could definitely tow the car free of charge to a shop. My wife asked why this woman was being so kind, and she said something to the effect of, "Women, we gotta stick together, right? I'd love to help you out." She then got back in the car, and my wife told me that she was going to follow us with her hazards on to some parking lot of a grocery store nearby, just to help us get out of the road. I still didn't think this was weird at all. My wife was very confident that this woman was genuine and simply wanted to assist us. So we pull into the parking lot, and my wife gets back out of the car. I'm still laying back in my seat, and I'm fairly certain that this woman doesn't even know that I'm here yet. She then starts talking to my wife about how in the last year, she's changed her life drastically, and that she could put her on to what she does. It seems believable. After all, this woman looked very nice, and her car was definitely expensive. My wife keeps insisting that she can just call a tow truck. She felt bad for taking up this woman's time, and that a tow truck was something we could afford. This woman kept insisting that her brother-in-law was coming, to be patient, and that he really doesn't mind. She even offered at some point to drive my wife around the area, looking for a shop that was still open. But my wife had already Googled some places, and they had all closed for the night. The woman told my wife that that was a good thing to look into, and they kept talking. No suspicion, honestly. She then starts asking my wife why she's in Vegas. Our car had New York plates, so it was kind of a dead giveaway that we weren't from around here. My wife says for adventure and to do something new. The woman asks if she has family she's close to, or a boyfriend. She could introduce her to some friends to help her get well acquainted, or whatever. That's when my wife motions over to me and says, "Well, I have a husband." And that's when the woman looked like a deer caught in headlights. I poked my head up, and I politely waved to her. She leans over and finally sees me. She stares for a few moments, and without saying a word, immediately gets back into her car. I've never seen anyone look at me like that, almost as if she just had to get away from me. Before pulling off, she tells my wife that she has to go to some store that's opening soon, but he'll be here in an hour, and she implored us not to leave. "He's gonna come help you. 1 hour. Okay, honey?" My wife was confused and tried to ask if this woman would be there too, but the woman just drove off. We knew then that something was wrong with this situation. We both just stared at each other in utter confusion. I have no idea still of why this happened. We ended up calling a towing company, and they fixed our car within 40 minutes. We drove back to the grocery store lot because my wife was persistent in believing the woman was going to come back, or her brother-in-law would, and she wanted to let them know that we didn't need their help. I told her, I don't think they're coming back, but we did end up waiting. No one came for the nearly 2 hours that we sat there before we drove off home. I did a little research and found out a lot of traffickers use women because they seem more trustworthy. Vegas obviously has a large presence of these things as well. The woman was almost desperate to keep my wife there, and it all felt so weird. Now when I look back, it seems even more obvious that there were danger signs. But in the moment, the woman was so charming and endearing that it seemed like she was genuinely trying to help. I still don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure she ran off because I was there, and she didn't anticipate for a man to be present. A few years back, I was driving myself to party with some friends from out of town. They lived about 30 minutes away, and it was around 10:30 p.m. Pitch blackout. So I'm driving down this lonely road, and I see a man on a small turnout adjacent to the road, holding a white bag in his hand. A little ways ahead of him, there's an older white Camaro with the door open. Interior lights still on, but nothing else. As I pull up on the guy, I roll down the window, and he says that his car broke down before asking for a little help. His hair is greasy and long. He looks a lot like the residents of that area, farmers, mechanics, etc. So I offer him a ride given that no immediate red flags presented themselves. And if worse came to worst, this dude was a little bit smaller than me. He was about 35 years old, slender, probably not more than 150 pounds, soaking wet. So I ask him where he's going, and he replies, into town. Away we go. I start trying to converse with the guy, but he's a bit weird and awkward, so eventually, I stop bothering to make conversation at all. Every so often, he shifts his position in the seat, and there is a clatter from the bag. He says to me that he needs to arrange a ride when he gets into town, and wonders if he could use my phone. I reluctantly hand it over, and he calls someone up and starts the conversation off by saying that he has some GPS for sale. As he's talking, his bag shifts, and I see he has car radios in there. It all kind of clicked for me then. The broken down looking car that I picked him up by, the one that he had intimated to me broke down on him, was a car he had just broken into, presumably to steal the radio. And now he's trying to sell it while in my car next to me. There's the red flag that I hadn't seen before he was in the car. Trying to keep it cool and light, I say, "Hey dude, when you're finished with your call, I need my phone back." I want to make him think that I'm dumb to his game, and then I'll take him wherever he needs to go. By the time we get about 10 minutes from where I'm headed, I know that I have to get rid of him somehow, but he's still on my phone, talking in circles with whoever is on the other end. So I'm like, "Hey brother, I need to make a call real quick so I can get into my friend's building." That's when he pauses for a moment before handing my phone back to me. I make a quick fake call before chucking it in the door pocket, far away from this guy's reach. Since we were now squarely in town, I ask him where he needs to get dropped. He says flatly, "Wherever you're going, that's where you can drop me." That response put me even further on edge, so I do my best to nonchalantly scan him to see if he has anything like a weapon on him. All I saw was his bag of electronics, so I felt pretty steadfast in my next set of actions. I slow down and stop on one of the mainish streets and say, "Here you go. I'm just going up around the corner, so I'll let you out here." He says, "Nah, man. You can drop me off wherever you're getting out." He says this while looking me square in the face. At this point, I feel like it's come to the stage that he's testing just what he can push me to do, what he can get away with, and even if there's something more for him to gain from the situation. That's when I finally lost the cool exterior. I reach over and push his seatbelt button in before yelling, "This is where I'm dropping you. Now get the f*** out." He looks at my pocket where my phone is, then back at my face, before saying, "All right, dude, whatever." The moment that he's out of my truck, he hasn't even closed the door. I squeal my tires as I pull off and immediately phone the police. Cops let me know that they'll send someone out to where I dropped him off and scan the area. I assumed that they couldn't find him immediately because I got a call from dispatch a few hours later asking for more details on the guy's appearance, if I saw where he was going, and if I got a name. I gave them all I could, but he never told me his name. I learned later just why that might have been. About a week down the road, I get a call from a detective that asked if I could come into the station to help identify the guy that I gave a ride to the other night. I said no problem and made my way down. I did a quick suspect lineup like you'd see on TV and was able to pull a guy from the lineup without any issue. As I'm speaking to the detective, wrapping up the statement that I'm giving, I ask offhandedly, "Is everyone that he stole from going to be able to get their stuff back?" The detective then looked at me in a rather chilling fashion and said, "I think that some of the people he came into contact with don't have use for their radios anymore." He didn't say anything further, but it raised my hackles more than just a little bit. The following few days, I keep my eyes on the news because what the detective said left me feeling like there was more to this story. And that's when I learned of a murder, one county over. The victim had been confronted when walking into their home one evening in what they believe was a robbery attempt. The suspect had stabbed them and left them on the doorstep before making off with their wallet, watch, and their 1991 white Camaro. They show a picture of the suspect now in custody. Same guy. Here I was thinking the radios were the biggest part of the story, that this dude was just some lowly thief. Turns out, he was a thief, but of both property and life.